Good morning. This is Norma Cowie for my Wednesday Norma Talks. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've learned and discovered about personal power and how I teach that when I'm doing self-development, or which happens to happen in most of my classes in the beginning anyway, whether it's psychic development, personal development, spiritual development. But I had to look up to see what other people were saying about personal power, and I got kind of a bit of a shock, actually. So I typed in, what is personal power? And the first thing that came up was Psychology Today, and it says, it's more of an attitude or state of mind than an attempt to maneuver or control others based on competence, vision, positive personal qualities, and service. Okay, so let's go down a little bit further. I went down. It goes on, is the ability to influence people and events with or without formal authority. Personal power has to do with applying it to others. Then, the ability to control the environment around you. That was from, now, but the one I liked, which was way down on the list, was from a website called Live Purpose. Can't even read my own writing now. So, oh, isn't that ridiculous? Something about purposenow.com. Anyway, it said, and this is more in line with what I believe, inner strength, faith in yourself, a willingness to be a co-creator in your life. That was so far down. If anybody out there that really wasn't kind of really looking, they would read those first ones, and it would sound that personal power was somebody who wanted to be in control. You would have got a bubble there because I hit it with my paper that I've got down. It's a little booklet, actually. So, which I apologize for. Now, I'm going to put up a share screen here, and we're going to talk a little bit about how I'm going to make that bigger. This is something I show, and hopefully, because I got two of them on a page here, so hopefully, yeah, I got two. These are pictures that I've taken and put in my picture file. You don't see these in the parks anymore, but when I was a kid, we had what we call seesaws. And the thing is, what I find is a couple of things that happens. We have power over, we have power under, and power with, which I'll get to a little bit more in a minute. But with a seesaw, you have to be in cooperation for it to work. If you look at the face of the little boy sitting on the bottom there, what he is doing here, look at the smirk he has on his face. It's like, ha, you're suspended in the air. You can't do anything about it. But the girl is smiling because she knows eventually he's going to push down with his feet, excuse me, and it's going to come into balance. And that is that whole thing about creating the balance between the two people that are on the seesaw. As an adult, when you've got kids, you always had to kind of just, make sure that they were going up and down and there's handles there for sure for it to hold on to. Well, they don't have I don't see them in parks anymore for kids. So they don't really learn about how to work with another because it's cooperation. You cannot make a seesaw work with one person. You have to have two. And you need cooperation with each other to make it work. Now, it sounds simple, except very often in our lives, that's not how it happens. Now, I'm going to go down the page here a little bit, which I put up another picture that I work with a lot. And they use a little bit of different words. This is based on the Karpman Triangle. Dr. Karpman, it's Karpman Drama Triangle. Now I use a little bit of a different word, and when I'm teaching this, I have this set up a little different way. I usually start with the rescuer at the top because a rescuer, it's funny, I've got a buzz now. Oh, I see why. We're just gonna, hang on a minute. I gotta take care of this. There, so I'm not listening to a buzz. Love interruptions. I don't really, I know mostly it doesn't happen. I like the rescuer on the top because the rescuer can work two ways. The rescuer is always the person that wants to help. very often is not actually looking after themselves. I find lots of rescuers that I work with don't know how to say no. When I say to them, do you know how to say no? So I have actually a piece written in my Secrets for Living Happily book where I talk about how I learned how to say no. And that was, I would say in the beginning, I'm unable to, if I didn't really want to do it, I always say, chicken side, do you want to do that? And the answer is no, I don't really want to do that for whatever reason. The reason doesn't matter. It's whether you want to do it or not. And so I started off by saying, I'm unable to do that right now. And what that did was claim the now space. Then I moved into, I'm unable to do that today. And then I eventually moved into be able to say no. What I began to realize that if I couldn't help, or often I didn't have time, or I just didn't want to do it, they would go off, the person who was asking, they would go off and they would find somebody else to do it or not, or they would put it off for another day or whatever. And I began to realize that if I'm not in my personal power, if I'm not creating that, if I'm not looking after me and I'm looking after other people, then there's something that begins to erode on the inside. So part of it is learning about your personal power, is to kind of take back, to be able to look inside to discover, do I want to do this or do I not want to do that? Now, why I put the rescuer on the top, where this triangle that I took from somewhere was, he's got the victim. The victim is for me, the victim is the person that always has an issue, does not really want to assume responsibility because it's somebody else's fault. And the rescuer very often gets caught up in the story that the victim has to say. And the victim really, if you don't go and play the rescuer, they will find somebody else. And I found over the years to give up the victim part of us, because we all have a part of us that often is the hardest part. Because somehow we get other people's empathy, sympathy, wanting to help, coming and doing things. And I'm not saying we should not help people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you want to, and if it's there, fine. But very often a person who is a consistent victim will find that they don't assume personal responsibility. They don't assume what they could or couldn't do. And so they're not in their strength. They're not in their personal power. They're one of the ones that manipulate, getting people to do what they want to do without sometimes thought of what their actions are going to bring about. So the rescuer gives a lot of energy. And because then if you look down at the part of the rescuer here, it says, I'm good and I'm accepted. And it's an enabling role. It definitely is an enabling role if we're a rescuer. And most kind people have a rescuing mode. And that's, I'm not saying we can't help people. We certainly need to help people. But it's when we're looking at when we are in our personal power. When I do something, it's because I want to do it, not because I think I should do it, or it would be better to do it, or whatever. Now, the other side of this, it got persecuted here, but I call it a dictator. And it says here, I'm right, and it's a power issue. Now, I have found over the years, when I move into a dictator role, and sometimes when you're teaching and you want something to get through, you'll kind of move into that through the voice, through the perception, as I said. It's like, it's not that you mean to maneuver or control others. You just want them to get it, but you'll tend to put your hand up or your finger up or whatever. I always tell a story as my first husband had lost the top part of his index finger. So it's from the first knuckle off. And when he would get into his I'm right stage, he would point his stubby finger at me, and I would say, don't point that at me, get that out of my face. And because I wanted a conversation. And when you get into dictator mode or persecutor mode, that's exactly it. Is that you're not open to conversation. It's like my way or the highway type thing. And we all know people who are like that. This is how it is. I have to be very careful of that myself sometimes, because I think that my philosophies and what I've learned, which is not always what mainstream says is okay, or in the way they presented things. And sometimes so I learned how to get more from a compassionate point of view. And if I come back up here for a moment to my seesaw, is to be able to create a balance where we're co-creating, where we're working on understanding, where no one's trying to give the power over or under. When we take classes, very often, yes, we sit there and we're listening. But now, one of the elements, I took another course at one time on this, and they had the opposite as to what's the opposite of victim and what's an opposite of, say, a rescuer or a dictator. But really, to me, it's always about the center point. We need to be in our center. We need to understand. We need to know when to listen so that we can keep this seesaw part very much in a workable way so that we are at one. I'm a bit of a chatterbox. Mainly, I live by myself. I'm quiet. I read. I watch TV. I work. I have clients, etc. So when often I just want to talk, because I've always been a talker. Unfortunately, even when I was young. And I find I tend to want to put out what I get. And I've had to teach myself, stop, listen, because you're not the only person in the room. And so it's to create that balance here. And we all have aspects of ourselves where we need to create the balance. But one of the ways you can find where you're imbalanced is to really look, where do I play the victim? Where am I rescuing others? And where am I just plain right, taking the attitude, well, I'm right no matter what, I'm not interested in what you have to say. Because if we can get a handle on these three aspects, when they begin to come up, we can then begin to move back into creating a co-creative balancing fact. Because point of fact is, we're not 100% perfect at any given time. Oh dear, unfortunately, but that's the truth of it. I'm going to stop the pictures now and come back into full screen. Here we go. Nobody said that life's journey, and especially for many of us who are on the spiritual end of things, where we're wanting to be at one with God, and I have talked about this before, that since I was probably 7, all I wanted to know who was God or what was God and how did it work? Because I kept hearing all sorts of things in the churches I went to, and I wasn't quite in my body when I was young. And consequently, a lot of it was murky, but I knew I needed to know who and what God was. Well, what it set me on is a journey, and I'm very fortunate because that power that we talk about, whatever name you want to attribute to it, put me into places and meeting people that sort of dictated in a way my life, how my life unfolded. And I've come to trust that. But at the same point, I still had to learn the lessons of being a human in this crazy world. And again, something I talk about a lot is how this is an emotional planet, and learning about what feelings were. I was shut down for many, many, many years, and slowly had to learn what feelings were and what they were. And then I had, like all of us, taught certain things. You're not supposed to feel this or do this or that or the other. You're not supposed to be this way or that way. And again, I had to go beyond that. And I really think that life presented me lots of opportunities to come into tune with that. Has it always been perfect? No. Sometimes I've screwed up terribly. But the other part of being connected into the grand force of things is that it's all about forgiveness. To forgive yourself is one of the hardest, most difficult things to do, because it's easy to beat ourselves up. It's easy to blame ourselves for anything. But then we're not in balance. We're not in balance if we're doing that. And we certainly, all we're doing is creating hurdles to bring ourselves into unity with the bigger picture of all that is. So this whole thing about personal power, it's not about power over. It's not about power under. It's about power with. And that is an appreciation and an acceptance of every individual, different ideas. And you can listen to different ideas without judgment. And that's a biggie, because most people run to judgment because it doesn't fit into what you believe or what you know. I've had to stand for many, many years where I was under a lot of, what would you call it, criticism, strain, for my beliefs and being a psychic, and knowing that everyone was born that way, and most deny it, and or else don't know what to do with it. I understood that, but I had to stand in my own truth of what I knew without getting upset when people tried to say that I was incorrect. I had to debate often on radios and TVs with the cynics of the world and the people who didn't believe in anything. And I really didn't have a huge vocabulary. I didn't have degrees or anything. I was just a little housewife sitting out there and saying, hey, this is how it is. Everybody is born with this talent, and some of us maybe a little bit more, just like a person runs faster than another. And that's, I know that might say fight that I went through has not today, doesn't seem to be pertinent today. Now there's other fights going on about what you believe or what you don't believe. And the acceptance of differences, I'm finding. If I don't think like how I'm supposed to think, or if I don't believe what I'm supposed to believe, then I must be, I'm wrong. That's not what life is. Life has always been about different ideas and concepts. I often thought that if I'd known about debating when I was younger, and I left school when I was 15 because my dad, the boss of the family, said, "Oh, you're 15 now, you have to go to work." And I did. So I was talking about power over. That was the beginning of my world. But at the same point, if I'd known about debating, if I'd understood what debating was, because even my dad said you'd argue black was white for the sake of an argument. And I wasn't really arguing. I was trying to figure things out. That was how my mind worked. And my mind always has worked that way. And so it's about acceptance of different ideas and different concepts and beliefs and attitudes. But the way our world is going with taking things out, not allowing free speech, not allowing different thoughts, people are coalescing. So why I wanted to talk about personal power today and the Karpman Triangle in particular, because it's so easy to make another person a victim. And if by doing that, what you've done is become a dictator, quote, persecutor, then where's the rescuer in this? Where does that fit in? Now, I found in myself, I have run around that circle within an hour. I've been the rescuer, the victim, the persecutor, until I really came to understand that everybody has a right, and it is a right, to believe differently. But we also have a responsibility to be able to communicate that without making another person wrong, but rather to be able to explore in conversation and in a willingness to understand differences and aware. And how often do we say that? How come you think that? What's the benefit to you to think that? What do you want from that particular thought thinking or reacting or being? Well, what does it bring you? Does it bring you solace? But a lot of people don't want to know because they don't know what to do with it. And I understand that overwhelmingness that happens. But at the same point, is not conversation, is not debate, is not an exchange of ideas the root of our society that we live in, called democracy? I'm not sure that that's what's happening in the world today. And that's sad. That's really sad. But at the same point, I know that those of us who believe that we have a right to have a different viewpoint, because if in the 70s and 80s, when I began becoming more well-known, speaking on radio and TV, doing workshops, if people hadn't been willing to listen to my ideas and just closed me down, sight unseen, then we would have missed a large part of what's a part of us. People would not know that they have intuition. They would not know that these pictures they see in their heads that don't make sense can be a clairvoyant picture. People don't know that they can hear music, they can hear voices. That has nothing to do with them being crazy, but just that they have they're clairaudient. They can hear beyond. And the other thing is really when you're working with someone like that is to make sure that it does make sense to them. But when you're running a lot of judgment, you're blocking out all that. And because I've been through this, I've been through how people can reject. And I was lucky. I was on the front wave of a lot of things opening up, and a lot of people have followed. But today, we've got different viewpoints happening again. People being accused of all sorts of things with no one listening. Where's the communication? Where's the talk? Where's the asking, how come you think that way? And also being given the right to think that way. So just look at your life. Take a look at your life. Where do you fit in the Karpman Triangle? Do you play victim? Are you rescuing people without seeing if they're actually assuming responsibility or not? Because many times a person needs help. There's no, hey, I've been there. I've been there where I've needed lots of help, but I wasn't crying about where I was at. Or are you a dictator because you want everything your way right now because I'm right? The moment you take that stand, I know sometimes I've been lecturing and I've got a pen in because I've been making diagrams and the pen comes out like this and I just smile and bring my hand down because I know my attitude is, I'm right, listen. And that is not really the effective way. And remember, personal power is to be able to be on that seesaw. So we are co-creating. We are working together. We are at one with each other. And then it makes it easy to be at one with the greater power, the love source that I talk about, the understanding and the knowing that we're all on a path. And this lifetime, this is only one little blip of a life amongst many lifetimes until we move on to another planet or dimension or whatever and start again. Because the soul, remember this, your soul is infinite. Now, I used to say that, but I never understood it. I understand it today. It's infinite. We are just having an experience on planet Earth, which is an emotional planet. And I will talk probably next week a little bit about the effects from Atlantis. But anyway, that's next week. This week, remember, you are a most wonderful being, powerful in your own way, and you want to be in your own personal power. This is me. So we give thanks for that. And as we look forward to the week, I want to say thank you for everything. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for contacting me through my website, normacowie.com. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you on Sunday. Thank you.